So now we're going to be specifically getting into Claude Debussy's influence. So Debussy and Stravinsky were in today's standards somewhat close in age, but in their time period, their 20-year age difference was quite a huge space in time, specifically regarding music evolution. Debussy and Stravinsky were friends throughout their career, and the influence from Debussy, specifically, in my opinion, started to be very prevalent in the last half of Stravinsky's career. At the beginning of Stravinsky's career, he was going to school at St. Petersburg Conservatory, where his basically meant a mentor or role model during this time period, specifically at a university. And that mentor was Rimsky-Korsakov. Rimsky-Korsakov did not approve of Debussy, and he actually warned Stravinsky away from Debussy's works. I actually found this quote in an article. It says from Korsakov, it says, "Better not listen to it. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting accustomed to it, and you'll end up by liking it." Of course, the rebel, I would say that Igor Stravinsky was. He was very young. He definitely listened to Debussy anyways, and he definitely ended up liking it. So yeah, Debussy and Stravinsky had very different composition styles for some of their career, but as Debussy's influence creeped into some works from Stravinsky, such as The Nightingale, which I will of course get into in the next couple slides, I would say that their writing styles were actually not all that different. They both use Impressionism in multiple instances, using more abnormal harmonic structure through their chordal composition. So now I'm going to go specifically into The Nightingale and how I think that Debussy had a huge influence on this opera. Um, so I first hear Debussy's influence in Stravinsky's The Nightingale right at the beginning, right in the introduction of Act 1, which I'm about to show you here in a second. Stravinsky uses his more unsettling chordal structure to represent the waves settling down in early morning. A fisherman on the shore starts to hear a nightingale's mystical sounds and mystical melody. I will now show you the opening of the Nightingale. So, as you can hear in this opening, you hear those up and down chordal structure, and just the unsettledness, but also the mystery You can hear right before square two that it's very mystical. You know that there's a mystical presence, which in this case is the nightingale. And the fisherman is kind of, um, this is just the opening, of course, but you can just, I don't know, I think you can definitely feel the mystical aspect of the mood that Stravinsky is trying to convey. It's almost as if you were riding on the waves during the scene, watching the fisherman trying to find this beautiful mystical bird that is singing this majestic melody. And that is pretty much the definition of Impressionism. As I hear Act One, to be quite honest with you, all I can hear is Nocturnes by Debussy, and which I mentioned earlier in my presentation, using his uncertain harmonic structure throughout this introduction up until he finds the bird. It is very similar to specifically the first piece in Nocturnes, which I will go ahead and show you now. Of course, I won't show you much of that Nocturnes because, of course, that's not what this presentation is about. And we listened to that piece, I think, several times in our class this year or this semester. But I just think if you really put the two side by side, there is clearly lots of influence from Debussy in this in the Nightingale. So now I'm going to go on to Act Two. There, in my opinion, there wasn't. I think Act One really shows that influence there. But in Act Two, I'm going to be talking about um, the scene where the Immersees bring the Nightingale to showcase its beautiful mystical music. So the Japanese Immersees brought the Nightingale to the Emperor to showcase its beautiful mystical songs, and at first is a happy time. The music follows. For example, in measure 70 of the second act, it plays sounds that are more from Japanese descent because Japanese Immersees are offering the Emperor a mechanical bird. Um, this is another example of Impressionism. This music uplifts the mood and changes the color. Here is the specific instance I'm going to be talking about. So I think that just right there displays the Japanese culture that he was trying to represent and admire, but also really give us this story. I imagine the Immersees walking up to this emperor with this mystical bird that is really outside of its realm because it does actually live in the forest. And the emperor later understands that he cannot have the bird, and that's why the Emercies offer him a mechanical bird. But that, of course, that is a different part of the story, and I'm not here to explain the opera to you. But yes, so I thought that this was a very great find, and a very great example of Impressionism. So all of this, I don't want to reiterate myself, but with Stravinsky's magic and Debussy's mystical influence on this work, The Nightingale was an absolute masterpiece. Um, we can't deny that the influence is there. We listened and compared, and so in my opinion, I do think that Debussy definitely influenced Igor Stravinsky, not only in his career, but definitely with this opera, specifically using Impressionism. I absolutely love this work, and I'm so glad that I got to share my research with you all. Thank you.